Hey, welcome back to Life on the Wrist. Hope you're doing well. So today we're going to give you a guide on how to purchase watches online on sites like Chrono24, eBay, and perhaps if you're going in store. This is when you're purchasing secondhand watches, both vintage and modern pieces. I hope this can give you some questions that you should probably ask. These are going to be my top 10 questions that you should ask, perhaps in this order to the seller of the watch. So that you can make the most informed decision about the watch when you're purchasing it and have faith in putting so much money down, because watches are expensive. It's a lot of money that you're putting down for something that you just want on your wrist. So you want to make sure that you're as thorough as possible, and I hope these questions give you a good idea of how to go about it. So the first question that I would ask is, how long have you had the watch, and why are you selling the watch? I think this is a great question because you can figure out if this watch is really just being purchased and resold, or if it's being family owned, which means it may be taken care of a little bit more. This gives you a good idea of the motives behind the seller, and it also helps you understand how you can negotiate with this person in front of you for that watch. Understanding how long they've had it can also help you trace the service history, which is another question that we're going to get into. It's something that you probably want to know so that you're not purchasing a watch with faulty parts or something like that. It's also really great to ask this question because then if they've only had it for a short period of time, but they seem to know so much about the watch, you may want to question that type of information. Perhaps they are just a very thorough person, but if they've only had it for, let's say, 6 months and they're deciding to sell it, but they know all this stuff about it, you probably want to just do a little bit more digging into how they know that information. The next question, and I mentioned it, is when was it last serviced? Watches are just like cars. They're made up of mechanical parts that are very elegantly put together so that they can help you tell time. And understanding when it was last serviced is super important because you don't want to purchase the watch and the watch has not been serviced for, let's say, 5 or 6 years, and then as soon as you slap it on your wrist, something goes wrong with it. Because let's say you're purchasing a $2,000 watch, the service of a $2,000 watch is probably going to be relatively expensive. So you're not going to consider that in the amount of money that you're going to have to put into the watch. You can also use that as kind of leverage when you're negotiating for a watch. So let's say the watch hasn't been serviced for 5 years and the person tells you that. You can say, okay, well, as we know, let's take Rolex for example. Rolexes are supposed to be serviced between 5 and 10 years for the best performance of that watch. So instead of purchasing it for X, I think I want to factor in the service cost, and I'm going to reduce it to this price. And that's a very informative way of trying to negotiate for that watch, but also it's you consciously taking into consideration the fact that the watch is going to need a service in the near future. So that's my second question. When was it last serviced? The third question that you should ask is during that service or during a service that it's been done, has it ever been refurbished or has it been polished? And a lot of times you can look at the watch and you can tell if it's been polished. One of the easiest ways to figure out if it has been polished is to look at the lugs of the watch. If the lugs look a little bit more rounded as opposed to being a little bit sharper, it's probably been polished. And I know this is an extremely divisive topic. Me personally, I don't like when my watches have been polished. It takes a little bit of that original steel or original material off of the watch, which means the integrity of the watch is a little bit more diminished. But I know some people really like when it has that new shine to it, and it's totally fine. I'm not going to say that that your opinion is wrong about this topic, or I'm only right about this topic. I think it's something that we just need to know. So, for example, for me, if it's been polished, I probably won't end up purchasing it. But for someone who does like that new look to the watch, and they look at it and they say, has this been polished? And it hasn't, perhaps that's something that they also need to factor into the price that they're going to purchase this watch for, because they have to consider the fact that they're going to have to take it to someone who's going to polish it and make it look like new. These are all questions that are going to add to eventually the price that you're going to offer for that watch. So the third question is, has it been refurbished or polished? The fourth question that I would ask, and this is along the lines of the service, is are all the parts original? Again, this is an extremely divisive topic. A lot of people won't purchase watches unless they have all original parts. Some people will purchase watches if they just have the correct parts in them. But this is something you're going to want to consider, especially let's say the watch was manufactured 2 years ago, but you notice that the bracelet isn't correct. You're going to want to then factor that into the price. You can say, okay, I see that the bracelet is incorrect, and being that it is in the original bracelet, I want to reduce it by this much. These are all ways in which you can negotiate to try and reduce the price of the watch that you're purchasing. And along that same line, and my number 5 question is, are all the parts genuine? Now, I made a video recently about how more people are, at least in the vintage world, are becoming a little bit more accepting of watches that have period correct parts, but perhaps aren't original. This question, are all the parts genuine, goes to the fact that let's say you have a watch and I don't know, let's say the crystal was replaced, but I know on some Omega models there's an Omega logo that's etched into the inside of the crystal. If you're purchasing this watch and you ask if all parts are genuine, and you look at the crystal of that watch and you see that there isn't an Omega logo on it, that means that crystal is not a genuine Omega crystal, and therefore, at least in the watch market, reduces the price slightly. This is again a piece of leverage that you can use when purchasing this watch, and help to negotiate your price that you feel comfortable with. Also, sometimes if internally in the movement, if there are parts that are not genuine, a lot of the times they are of lesser quality, which means there's high potential of that piece failing, and ultimately making you need to get the watch serviced for another time. And obviously, you being the responsible watch owner, you're going to get a genuine part, but you want to make sure that that's all known. And I know it's very, very difficult for you to do this because you're not a watchmaker. You're not going to take the watch apart before purchasing it, look at it under a loop and say, oh, this isn't a genuine part, I'm not purchasing it. This has a lot to do with the trust of that individual. And that's another problem with negotiating negotiating for a watch. The 6th question is that I would ask is, how is it running? Obviously, watches are supposed to keep time, and you want to make sure that you're purchasing something that is keeping accurate time. A lot of times, if it's not running accurately, that may be indicative of a service. So let's say I'm negotiating for a watch, and I ask the person when was the last service, and they say within the last year. And I say, okay, that's great. That means it's probably running really well. And then they say to you, oh no, it's actually running like plus minus 1 minute a day. It depends what kind of watch you're purchasing, but that doesn't really line up. There are other things that could be wrong with it. Perhaps the movement's magnetized or something like that, but this gives you an idea. This can help you determine other elements of this watch negotiation. And ultimately, you want a watch that keeps time, so you want to know how it's running. The next thing is there any noticeable wear on the watch? And this is perhaps a little bit more, this question is a little bit more tailored towards whether or not, when you're purchasing a watch online. Places like eBay and Chrono24, obviously they're uploading pictures, but perhaps they're not uploading as high quality pictures as they possibly can, or perhaps they're not showing the correct angles where you can really get an idea of what that watch looks like in person. So, you probably want to message the seller, say, hey, can you take some more pictures for me so I can see if there's any noticeable wear? Or you can ask them, and perhaps there's going to be things you can't see in the pictures that they can describe to you. This will, again, allow you to make an informed decision on whether or not you want to purchase that watch. And it also, it sucks when you receive a watch and you can see a massive dent in the case or something like that, and you couldn't pick it up because of the pictures and you didn't ask the question. So it'll save you some heartache as well. So that was my number 7. My next question, number 8, is are there any, what's included in my purchase? This is extremely important because this has happened to me a few times. I have purchased a watch and only the watch head comes and not the strap that it was on. And I look at the listing and it didn't even say anything about the strap not coming. And they said, oh no, you're just purchasing the head. So I had to return it. But you want to see if there's any, the box and papers, warranty card, what straps come with it, if there's a bracelet that comes with it. These are all things that can be part of a watch purchase. And you want to know what you're going to receive so that you don't have to have issues with them down the road when you receive what you're not expecting. Again, this also assists in the negotiation of this watch. You can, if let's say it's only coming with, let's say you're purchasing a Rolex Datejust and doesn't come with a Rolex bracelet, it only comes on a strap. Normally the bracelets are a lot more expensive than straps, so you can negotiate it down a little bit further. So these are other elements that you can try and help with your negotiation. The next, and in my opinion, the most important question that you must ask is, have you liked this video? I'm just kidding, but if you haven't, slap a like on this video, I really would appreciate it. No, my number 9 and most important question that you should ask, perhaps a little bit more to yourself, is looking at the feedback of the seller. Now, online, eBay makes it really, really nice because they allow people to review the services of sellers, and most of the time the community is quite honest. So you want to review those, see if there's any, if there's been any issues. In my opinion, if any seller has anything lower than like a 98%, they're doing something wrong, because it's selling watches, at least selling things on eBay, is extremely easy. All you have to do is be honest and on time. Those are basically the only two elements, characteristics of a seller on eBay that need to be that a seller on eBay need to have. Be honest and be on time. That's it. Let's say you're purchasing it from a store in your local city. Obviously, you can look online for reviews of that place, or perhaps talk to people around you that have purchased from there, get their feedback on it and what their opinions are of that seller. You don't want to purchase from someone bad, and in my opinion, 80% of a watch purchase is the person who you're buying it from. You want to trust that person, because when you purchase it, you want that will create a relationship with them. Just like if you purchase a watch from Life on the Wrist, we are going to have a relationship during that purchase, but also post that purchase, and that's exactly what how a watch community is built. So question the seller's feedback so that you're making the best decision possible. And the last is, what is a return policy? Obviously, eBay has money back guaranteed, but you want to make sure that it's in the listing when you're talking to people. If you're purchasing from a local shop, a lot of the times they'll give you like a certain period where it's almost like a guarantee. If something goes wrong with it, you can bring it back. But you want to make sure that you at least have some avenue to make sure that you both are in agreement for that purchase. So those are my 10 questions that I would ask. 1, to make sure that you're making the most informed decision when purchasing a watch, but also 10 ways that you can help, 10 elements of a negotiation that you can probably use to reduce the price or find the correct price according to the way in which the watch is laid out. Hope you guys enjoyed that, and if you've made it this far and you haven't already, like I said, like this video. It really would help us out. And subscribe to our channel if you like these types of videos. We make watch videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so stay tuned for other videos. And on that note, I hope you guys have a nice rest of your day.